and I thought this would be a good place to start this live stream, as this is a Ukrainian border post pillar, I guess we can call it. And the colors of Ukraine with the Ukrainian symbol, the trident. And I'm obviously not on the border, but since it's here in this park, which is known as Victory Park, Park Перемоги, here in Odessa, just behind me is the Black Sea. I thought it was a good place to start, as Ukraine has crossed the border in the last few days into Russia. So they went past these real border pillars into Russia in the Kursk region. And it is already a few days of this, we'll call it an incursion for now, inverted commas, because it seems a bit more significant than just an incursion. I'm just sitting here outside the sun. It is super hot. It's middle of the day in Odessa. Oh, and my mic has fallen, so let me get it back. This is, I bought this t-shirt actually yesterday, so apparently it doesn't grip as well with the mic. So welcome to a video. It has been about 2 weeks since I made something for this new geopolitical channel, Ukraine Geopolitics, with me, Connor Klein. If you're new here, I have a background in international relations with a specialization in this region at the world's premier graduate school for international relations, Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. I also worked a little bit with this region back in the day at the EU institutions, not a huge amount, but a little bit. I have also specialization in strategic studies, and most importantly, I've been hanging out here in this region, Ukraine, Moldova, Belarus, Russia, for most probably of the last decade, and I speak the local languages, so I speak Ukrainian and Russian, so I can give you a unique perspective on what's going on. I'm actually here on the ground in Ukraine, although when I started this channel, I thought being on the ground in Ukraine would be obviously a nice, unique element to the channel, because most of the people who comment for either side, well, there aren't too many people who are pro-Russian who are live streaming or making videos in Ukraine at the moment, obviously, but even those that are pro-Ukrainian or supporting Ukraine, I don't think any of them are actually based with people who are currently in Ukraine. Even if they're Ukrainian, they've left. And ironically, now we have this Ukrainian incursion. Again, inverted commas incursion. It's more like an invasion at this point, because it looks like a significant force into Russia. So maybe I should have been live streaming this from Russia, make more sense, but at least my border pillar makes it a little bit relevant here. So anyways, in today's video, I am going to go through what has happened over the last 4 days. And normally we have some interaction. Of course, it's a new channel, just getting it started, so I don't know if anyone logged on. It's obviously very early also in the States where most of my audience is when I decided to start this. That's because I'm going to Chisinau this evening. So I will be live streaming for the other channel, the lifestyle channel, tomorrow from Chisinau. So Kursk, it is on the border. It is across from Sumy Oblast. So if you understand the east of Ukraine, you got Sumy. It's a city and a region that borders with Belarus and with Russia. Pretty sure it also borders to the north with Belarus. Maybe that's just Chernihiv Oblast, but importantly, it borders with Kursk. Kursk is a city. It's about 500,000 people, and the region is called Kursk region. Same for Sumy. It's a city that's a bit smaller. It's probably pre-war population or pre-2022 invasion population of probably around 300,000. Been there once a long time ago. It's almost a decade ago since I was in Sumy. So Ukrainian troops crossed the border in a surprise attack. There have been incursions, which were real incursions as it turned out, in the past last year into the Belgorod region, or Belgorod if you want to use the Ukrainian name, which were primarily undertaken by Russian citizens that were fighting as a grouping in the Ukrainian army. So they're known as I think it's the Free Legion of Russia or something like that, the name. And this time is different because those incursions last year were small in number because they were using the Russian citizens who were in the Ukrainian army in a special segment of the Ukrainian army. And they're not very numerous. They took some equipment, I think it was all Soviet equipment, and they went across. And they occupied some, or they would say maybe liberated, since they're Russian citizens, from the recognized government of Russia. Although, is Putin really recognized everywhere? I guess he still is. And they held them for a certain amount of time, caused a little bit of chaos, and then withdrew back across the border. So it's kind of more of this diversionary and tactic and more a PR stunt than anything else significant in terms of changing the dynamics of the war. This time, however, it is clearly members of the Ukrainian military who are Ukrainian citizens, so the well-trained professional units of the Ukrainian military with a mixture of Soviet and, we'll say, Western equipment, or equipment that they got from NATO states. And they are significant in number. I actually went and watched one of the Russian propagandist videos in English 2 days ago, and he just read out from RT that yeah, it's 1,000 soldiers, they have no hope, they've already more or less been defeated. It's clearly not. That's clearly several thousand Ukrainian soldiers. I think we can say nearly all the sources that we're getting information from are actually Russian sources or pro-Russian sources. Ukraine itself and the pro-Ukrainian YouTubers have not said very much. Ukraine government has operational security in what they're actually doing, and then the pro-Ukrainian commentariat has not said very much because, well, if they do know something important, they probably feel they can't say it on YouTube or on Twitter or somewhere else, because obviously they might get in trouble if it was actually really important what they were saying, as it would maybe reveal something that the Russians don't know. But basically what has happened is that Ukraine has now taken some key cities. There is a town called Sudzha across the border. When I say key cities, I mean, I should say key small towns just across the border. The actual regional capital, Kursk, is a lot further away and a lot bigger. It's 500,000 people. So they've taken these rather small towns near the border. They're occupying at a minimum 130 square kilometers within Russia. It's probably a lot more than that, but that's the low water mark. That is absolutely confirmed by the Russian sources, the Russian military bloggers. We know for sure that they have that. Overnight, there are videos of a Russian column that is coming to reinforce the area and presumably try to stop the Ukrainian advance, being absolutely decimated. I saw on the video at least 30 vehicles destroyed, and some of those were transporting soldiers, because I could see the bodies in the back of the van. The van was not completely, or the truck was not completely decimated, but there was just like lots of bodies, so you could still see that they were there. So hard to know how many Russian soldiers were killed, but obviously that column coming to try to stop the Ukrainian advance on that axis is kaput, is no more. So those guys are obviously not in the fight. Presumably Ukraine will find it easier to move along that axis. It seems to be 3 axes. They seem to be going out one this way, one this way, and one this way along the main roads. They're not going to go straight across along the border. There's another road goes along the border, but apparently the Ukrainians have dropped mines there, so they're not going to go that way. And they're expanding this out. So in summary, this is a big development in the Russo-Ukrainian war. Ukraine now has crossed the border and looks like they're, well, we can get into the scenarios in a second, but they have definitely taken control of significant amounts of Russian territory, not just 1 or 2 villages, but now they've gone probably more than a dozen at this point. And it looks like a significant advance, and we can now speculate a little bit about, or I will speculate exactly what might be going on. So there are a few scenarios. One is that it's just PR exercise still, that they've also taken a significant number of Russian POWs. They're claiming about at least 400. I saw video evidence of definitely over 100 for sure, just roughly looking at what the numbers of guys that were there, and they look like different videos, so definitely over 100. They could just withdraw all their troops, turn around, take the prisoners of war, and just reinforce the border. And we've been a diversion. Russia sending obviously troops from other places. I think that's unlikely. I think more likely they've also started to dig some fortifications. Again, we're getting these, there's obviously fog of war at the moment, but we are getting these reports from the Russian side. So I don't, we put that as a low watermark about what the Ukrainians are doing all the time, and probably it's pretty reliable. If they say something that's, I guess, positive for Ukraine, we can take it as probably likely true. And they have started to dig in some fortifications around Sudzha, so this town they took, which is the first stage of their advance. So it looks like for sure they're going to try and I would say for sure they're going to try and fortify that area of 130 square kilometers and try to hold on to that, because if they go into defense and the Russians come, then the Russians will have to expend a lot more energy trying to take that territory back than the Ukrainians will defending it. So it will obviously wear down the Russian forces a little bit. It won't be it's not going to win the war doing that, but that is one scenario. They should also point out that there were two lines of defense by Russia, one at the border, one just before Suja, and the Ukrainians burst through those. So after that, there's no more lines of defense all the way to Kursk. Now, there are a few places they could go. They could try to go all the way to Kursk, try to occupy the city. That seems like a tall order. It's a city of 500,000 people. That would presumably take a lot of resources. They would have to fight their way into a big urban area. Well, the Russians don't look that prepared for it. There are a few places on the way. There is a nuclear power plant that they could try and seize. They're still a good bit away from that. And if they seize that, then that would be interesting. That would be obviously a strategically significant object in Russia that Ukraine will have seized. And that will, of course, complicate things for Russia because, yeah, they can hardly start. Well, maybe they will start firing rockets at it, but one would think they will probably find it hard to retake that militarily without surrounding it first. So they can go and take a larger area, and maybe they can take 500 square kilometers. Maybe they could go and try to take the regional capital Kursk. I think that's a little bit of a stretch. More likely, they take maybe up to this nuclear power plant because it's strategic, and they expand the area that they can control. They may also launch another incursion somewhere along that front. Remember, there's still Russian forces in the Kharkiv Oblast, as they launched an offensive 3 months ago. And it has been hard, actually, even though that more or less failed, to make any more progress, or they just occupy a small amount of territory on the border. The Russians still, it seems to have been hard for the Ukrainians to dislodge them from there because they're dug in, and then you got to spend probably on average about 3 times more resources in terms of men and material to get them out again. So this could be, the Ukrainians, if they now continue to advance, Russia's going to is starting to pull resources from other places. So they have a few choices. They can send in conscripts, or the TikTok army that was there defending the border, as they're broadly known as Kadyrov's Chechen loyalist fighters, who don't seem to do very much fighting when the going gets tough, because they weren't engaged. There were some hilarious videos of their commander talking about taking up popcorn to watch the Ukrainians get destroyed, and then 2 days later he's making another video, and he said, yeah, it looks like the Ukrainians just drove past us. They don't seem engaged in the fighting at all. But anyways, Russia's reinforcing. We've seen that one convoy destroyed overnight. And I've just seen on Russian TV other convoys coming of troops. Hard to know where they're coming from. Are they going to pull resources from where they are in Kharkiv? That would be the closest, presumably. But then they will probably have to give up that territory. Probably the Ukrainians would be able to then take it pretty quickly if the Russians have to pull their resources from there. So that would be one achievement by Ukraine already. Or they're going to pull them from the front lines where they're actually making slow, consistent progress. I think per month they're taking what the Ukrainians took in this offensive in 2 days. The Russians are taking by just these tactics of destroying everything and then moving forward in Donbass. And that will obviously weaken their momentum in Donbass. That's probably not what the Ukrainians really want, because the Russians, by advancing there, are using up a lot of their material. Their losses in terms of material and troops are at their highest at any point during the war over the last 6 months. So basically over the summer, maybe less than 6 months. So not necessarily what the Ukrainians want. That they don't really mind too much the Russians making piecemeal advances in Donbass if they're very expensive. So the Russians have to make a decision who they're sending. If they send conscripts, they will perform presumably very badly against well-trained Ukrainian troops, and the Russian losses will be enormous, and this may cause major political problems in Russia. So I think they will probably pull them from from the main front to just give up and try to make progress. That would seem the most sensible. Ukrainians will dig in at a certain point once they've run out of momentum in this, and then we will have a situation, presumably, that they hold some territory for a while. They can either make it very expensive for the Russians to try and take that back. Russia will be under a lot of pressure because it is actually some de jure Russian territory that's been occupied by Ukraine. They will have to use a lot of material, a lot of troops to try and take it back, and it will be very expensive. Or they're unsuccessful in taking it back, and the Ukrainians then say, well, we can trade territory. You can give us back some of Donbass if you want this part of Russia back, or it could be held for long term. So that is one possibility. The nuclear power plant is very interesting. If Ukraine does manage to take that, then we obviously have the nuclear power plant that Russia has occupied for over 2 years, over 2.5 years at this point, at Enohodar in the Zaporizhia Oblast. So maybe there's something they can trade there at some future negotiation or in interim negotiation. Might be something that might happen. So all very interesting. We can't really say a huge amount at this juncture because we are completely dependent on the pro-Russian sources almost entirely for our information. A lot of videos coming out of Russia showing distraught civilians fleeing the areas that Ukraine has now advanced into. Many of them appealing to Putin, which always amuses me, as if Putin could care less about his own citizens. He hasn't stayed dictator for this amount of time, over 20 years, by caring about what the average citizen in Russia and their welfare. He stayed in power by eliminating his rivals and creating a dictatorship. And he's not completely unaware or immune to popular opinion. He does take it into account, but yeah, I don't know why they're always appealing to this crazy nutcase they have, delusional man in the Kremlin. But yeah, a lot of them were saying from the video clips they were complaining about the local authorities, no evacuations. Many were saying that they supported the war against Ukraine, and now they've been left abandoned. So a lot of anger there. It didn't seem in general on these, again, Russian videos to be directed towards the Ukrainian troops so much, but more against the Russian authorities. So this is a political problem. This will put a lot of pressure on locally on Putin. It will not, from my observation, make much of a difference to Russians in Moscow. They don't care about other Russians in general very much. It's an empire in its mentality. Those kind of provincial people, who cares about them in general? Moscow, St. Petersburg, and a few small pockets of the country take most of the resources from the provinces, and they basically live relatively good lives with it, whilst most of Russia is extremely poor. So I'm not expecting some big revolution or something like that as a result of this. It may cause a lot of problems locally. Be interesting to see what Ukraine does. They may try to troll Russia by organizing referenda in these places, saying that they've just voted to join Ukraine, change their constitutions, all these parts are part of Ukraine, because historically a lot of Ukrainians lived in this region until probably the early 20th century, mid 20th century. Belgorod, Kursk, Rostov-on-Don. These places had a lot of Ukrainians. Kuban, actually, some that had majority Ukrainian populations. That is no longer the case, but Russia seems to use this as part of its justification for invading Ukraine. It says it's historical Russian land, inverted commas. Well, Ukrainians can obviously troll them and say exactly the same thing, organize some illegitimate referenda claiming change their constitution, and then say, hey, when we sit down to negotiate, we'll trade you Kursk, I don't know where, Belgorod, Kuban, and all these regions that we've claimed and we occupy a little bit of, to getting back, obviously, the occupied parts of Zaporizhia, Kherson, Kharkiv, if there's still any Kharkiv occupied, Luhansk and Donetsk. Probably Crimea will be a separate discussion. So there's some of the possibilities. If this continues and Putin and the Russian forces can't get a grip on it, they may expand. I don't think the Ukrainians want to go too far and take Kursk, because they'd have to hold it, and that would be probably a mess for them, and definitely uncharted territory, actually occupying a part of Russia. Be very interesting to see how the locals react, any of those that stayed. Maybe they don't really care too much who's in charge. That's a possibility. And in fact, that would make it very interesting to see, just because that's always been my impression. A lot of these regions on the border, they're not really too concerned about which country they're in, is my feeling a lot of the time. They'd rather just have no war and not have all this fighting. So, that is all I'm going to say. If you have any questions, just read quickly in the comments. I know that I've just started this channel, so I may do something on the main channel as well. Again, subscribe here, turn on notifications in future. Now that YouTube, by the way, is allowing me to do it on my cell phone, that's why I was able to come out here to the park. This was my original idea, to give you the view from the ground in Ukraine and discuss geopolitics here. Now apparently a lot of the actions going to take place in Russia itself. So, it's kind of an interesting twist. So I might do some just from more the studio setup, and I will shoot some videos in the coming days, maybe daily updates of this Kursk offensive by Ukraine. I think that's probably going to be a good value as things go forward. And I will, in the future, obviously we'll have a lot more discussions here, and this channel hopefully will grow as I produce the content over the next few months. Second channel, I divided it up because I just got the feeling, looking at my analysis more than my feeling, also took some counsel from some other people who do this more professionally, is that it would make more sense to pull out the geopolitics from the main lifestyle, because it's attracting There is some overlap, but mainly two audiences. A lot of the people who are interested in geopolitics have no intention of moving to the region. And yeah, then they don't tune into my other videos. So I kind of in the algorithm, you know, I make one video about geopolitics and 4 about lifestyle, and they don't tune into it. And then obviously my geopolitical content in the live streams gets less views on the main channel, even when I do the live streams, than when I do lifestyle. So yeah, just try to pull those out, and we'll see where it goes. This is not monetized for now because I need to get 1,000 subscribers and 1,000, I think, watch hours. So I can not worry about being censored too much. I can't get demonetized as not monetized. So I can kind of, I guess, be the person who's going to freely talk about everything. I could even put up a lot of more. I could probably put up the combat footage at this point, and not worry about demonetization. But anyways, let me read if there are any comments, and then you know, I'll close up this live stream and come back to you probably tomorrow even with another update, either a video or another live stream. I will be in Chisinau tomorrow. So Andrea says the appeals to Putin, the very guy who was guilty for all of this, are indeed hilarious and show that many Russians still don't understand it. Yeah, it's like I did a video on the main channel where I reacted to some street interviews in Moscow, and I took the street interviews from, it was from this other channel, Real Reporter, who's part of this clique that do the what I call soft power propaganda for Russia, some more lifestyle propaganda. And he you know, he interviewed several, I think they were all women, who had family members in Ukraine, and I just wanted to react and show like how delusional these Russians are. They even can talk to people who are there on the ground who are family members, and they just don't believe anything these people, family members, tell them. Just believe the state propaganda. Like a lot of these women are also older, so they're just watching the straight TV all the time, completely delusional about the war, its effects, and the reality of the situation in the Russo-Ukrainian war. And yeah, they don't understand that Russia's a belligerent, and now maybe they're going to start understanding when they hear about conscripts. Maybe if they have family members in Kursk, now they're maybe going to wake up a little bit, and the people of Kursk. But most people in Moscow don't care. They don't care about other Russians. They're fine about Ukrainians. They don't care if Ukrainians are genocided, they're murdered. Couldn't care less. And to be frank, they don't seem to care very much about other Russians. They don't care about all the Russian casualties. It's almost certainly somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million Russians are either wounded, dead, or missing in action. Most Russians don't care. So I don't think it's, but this is just funny to see this. By the way, if you're thinking of coming to Ukraine, of course, I have my guide to coming to Ukraine during the war, the Insider's Guide to Ukraine during the war. It's down below. It's $38 US or 35 euros, and you can click and buy it, and then I'll send it over to you. And we also have a community aspect with that, with the other. I think everybody's been a guy who's bought it so far. Yeah, I think so. But anyways, it's mainly guys coming here. There are some women who I meet from North America and Western Europe doing volunteering normally who I meet here. Or in some sort of international aid agency, but apparently they don't watch my channel. Definitely not my lifestyle channel, since it's obviously directed towards men between, say, 25 and I will say up to 55 normally. Michael, actually, it's just men, we'll say adult men, who are interested in coming here, normally single. So they don't tend to watch that, so they haven't invested in the guide. But the guide, all your logistics, staying as safe as possible, hospitality guides for Kyiv, Lviv, Odessa, Uzhhorod, and Chernovtsi. I will expand that because one of my clients actually, he is in Kharkiv at the moment, and I actually have my first client for coming to these parts in the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years, and that will be to Lviv. So if you're interested in our experience, also just fill out an application form, and we'll see. It might be a good fit for us to work together. But a different setup, obviously. There's very little nightlife at the moment in Ukraine with, you know, curfew and all that stuff. So guidebook down below if you're interested and you're coming here. It'll definitely help you a lot and save you a lot of time. Hopefully keep it a bit safer. So since there are no more comments, I'm going to end this live stream. So from Park Перемоги, it is Slava Ukraini, Horom Slava do Перемоги. So glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes, to victory.